What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Burn the Wagon, where we're here to burn the wagon that is capitalism, patriarchy, and colonialism. Today, my guest is Poppy. So, an artist out of the Bay. I'm going to go ahead and let them pronounce their last name because I don't want to butcher it. So, once you get in, Pop, I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself because I don't want to butcher your last name. So yeah, thank you guys for joining us again on the Burn the Wagon podcast. About to go live with an amazing artist out of the Bay, doing great work, doing all kind of stuff. So yeah, should be able to. Hey, how's it going?
Hi, good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor.
And I just want to ask, how do you pronounce your last names? Because I didn't want to butcher them.
Yeah, no worries. It's Gallegos-Zingarelli. It's
Okay.
my last name.
Okay, cool. So before we get started on anything, I just want to do our little prayer that we got going, and then we'll go on to the questions that we got. So first, I just want to send any love to anybody that's struggling from mental health issues. I want to send love to anybody that's struggling from domestic violence issues. I want to send love to any of our ancestors that have passed on to the spirit realm. I want to send love to anybody out in Palestine that is struggling right now, or here in the United States. I also want to send love to the land where I am at is in Pomo territory. And if you guys want to drop in the comments where you guys are at, or Poppy, I want to let you go ahead and say where you're at, and then we'll just go on to the next questions and then let you introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Poppy Gallegos-Zingarelli. I use she, her, they, them pronouns. I'm currently on the occupied territory of Huchun, which is the ancestral lands of the Moak-Moaloni people and the confederated villages of Lijan. But I'm originally from San Francisco, which is the occupied territory of Yalamu, so Ramaytush Ohlone territory. I am a descendant of the Taos Pueblo and Hickory Apache peoples of New Mexico. I'm reconnecting, so I'm still learning a lot about my culture. A lot of my family has been disconnected from our native roots, and especially growing up urban, that's had also an impact on me, not being able to be directly connected to the culture. Yeah.
And I think this is going to be an amazing conversation because I grew up on the res, and then I haven't being able to have conversations with the opposite, the urban native, is amazing. And then you're also reconnecting, which I push for this people to do as much as possible, because a lot of people try to bag on the urban native for being urban, but they have nothing to do with that situation. There's nothing that people can do with where they grew up. So I'll fully encourage people to reconnect as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm, the same way. I think the perspective and of growing up urban native, especially in San Francisco, has been one that's, very unique to my upbringing, and just how I've come about identifying as an urban native woman. I grew up, I'm also mixed, so I'm part half Italian from my dad's side, and my mom's also, she's native, but she's mixed also with Spanish. So growing up and having, all these cultures surrounded by me, but also not having a direct tie to my native roots. Obviously, I grew up knowing I was native, but not directly connected to my tribe. I'm not enrolled, and really rediscovering my history is something that I've been working on with my family too. Yeah.
That's amazing. And you said you grew up your whole life in San Francisco?
Yep, born and raised in the city. Something I'm really proud of, honestly, because I totally resonate what you're saying. Is what I've learned is, the urban native experience is one that's very unique, and it's not really one that can be homogenized either, that of just the wider native experience. And especially in the Bay Area, where there's so much history that a lot of people don't know about that's connected to, native people. And California in itself is such, it's literally the most populated state with the most Native people. And I think also folks forget that is like, there's, you know, Native folks of all different types of walks of life that, you know, reside in this state and especially in the Bay Area too. So when growing up, I was really fortunate to have access to the urban Native community. I grew up in the, I would say the NOPA district in San Francisco, but it's really close to the Fillmore. So I grew up around a lot of African American culture, also a lot of just, San Francisco is just a diverse like place in general. So I grew up just around about every culture, honestly. But I really was exposed to like other urban natives, I would say, I think in elementary school when my mom signed me up for Indian Ed. So basically it's a program in the city through the San Francisco Unified School District that helps to like retain urban native students, which is really great. And I started doing programming with them all the way up until I graduated in high school. Really shout out to Indian Ed because they helped me to have a lot of pride in my identity and in being Native, even in being in the city. Like having other folks to talk to and just connect with has been like very rewarding and reassuring for me. And they gave us a lot of amazing opportunities too, and they still do to so many youth in the city, really. So
And how long did so at what point did that you get into that program? And then how long did they help you?
yeah, so I would say I started going in about maybe second or third grade, so pretty young.
Oh, cool.
Um, yeah, so I started going pretty young, and basically they have after school programs. I would go more during like school breaks, like during spring break and stuff. They would have different programming that they would offer. But also because I was also enrolled in the Boys and Girls Club, so that's where I spent most of my time as a kid. But Indian Ed offered like free field trips, cultural workshops. We made baskets, we ground acorns. We had folks come in and do demonstrations and work with us, making clapper sticks. Really a bunch of great things that just, you know, I can never forget and like take for granted.
Oh, so you were like super connected into the, like making clapper stick. That's super cool. That's
Yeah,
really amazing. And like gathering acorns is really cool too. Do you have any connection to your ties to like a reservation or like back where your family's from?
yeah. So not directly. It's been really difficult for us reconnecting just because like a lot of the information that we have is through like oral history and through my family. So basically, what happened was one of my descendants, it was a matriarch of my family. She was a Native woman, and she was really during this time she was a baby and she was abandoned. So she didn't grow up in her Hickory Apache culture. But that woman would be like the matriarch of my family, basically, and um, really just like thinking about how that really impacts the connection that I have, like with reconnecting and in the tribes in which I'm trying to reconnect to, has been really difficult. But I do have roots from Taos Pueblo too, that folks were enrolled in my family. But a lot of my family has also just assimilated over the years and become urban just because it's more, there's more economic opportunity, or at least that they found in assimilating just throughout the generations. So, yeah.
I think it's amazing because like you're in the Bay Area and there's a huge native like community out there and huge native like presence.
Mhm.
And I think that's like amazing. We were going to talk about the Berkeley community that you created, and we can just go right into that from here. But I think that's amazing because that's the best way to connect. You know, like it may not be like your tribe or your connection to whatever, you know, but like at least it's like you have a connection to like a community of people that are gonna like have your back. You know what I mean? And I think that's cool. So like we can go right into going to school at Berkeley and what you're doing there and your thesis paper and yeah, we'll start with there. Your thesis paper.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So my thesis right now, so I'm a fourth year at Berkeley, about to graduate in the spring with a major in Native American Studies and a minor in education. And right now I'm working on my honors thesis with Sherry Hundorf. She's a really well-renowned Native American Studies professor. She's a doctor. She's Yupik. She's really wonderful, and I've really enjoyed like working with her so far. And I'm going to be writing about kind of my experience that totally has to play in with being urban native is attending a summer camp that I've been going to since I was 8 years old, Camp Mendocino. And this summer camp, like many American summer camps, has used Native American, misrepresentation, false cultural acts and stuff to, it's literally ingrained in the camp culture. And so writing a lot about how I navigated that as a youth who, at the time, I didn't understand that this was wrong. I was being taught that it was normalized, and in reality, some folks were telling me like, oh, well, it's honoring, the people, and in reality, it's not, it's erasure, and it took me a long time to realize that and process that, which in itself has been like a journey, but really writing also about my work within the camp, because I've been with the organization. It's through the Boys and Girls Clubs of San Francisco. Really just working on and bettering the things that we have done in the past. So these acts of, misrepresentation, using Native names to group campers, like they were literally grouped in tribes. And this is something that's unfortunately not just in our camp, but in a lot of camps across the United States and in Canada, is using Native people as an image, and also, I guess, kind of justifying these camps' commodification of nature, and also like just excuse to be closer to nature. Basically, I've been working with camp as I was hired as their first ever Native American Initiative Coordinator. And our camp is in Mendocino. It's in between Fort Bragg and Willits. So I think you know those territories, so those are our Northern Pomo relatives that are up there. And I've been really fortunate to work with some folks from Sherwood Valley on bringing cultural programming to the camp. We did that not only this summer, but also last summer we first implemented it, and it went out really well, working with the staff, teaching them about the history of the camp, like the history before camp was camp, there on these ancestral territories since time immemorial. So yeah, I've been really fortunate to work with them, and basically writing about this for my thesis. It's kind of like a joint project.
That's cool. Like, because I work for this nonprofit, and one of our goals for like this year is to take kids out on a camp. And in me, I was like, okay, I want to find a native-led camp. And like you're saying, there's all of them are in their write-up have this like they acknowledge native, they have blah blah blah, have this all native write-up thing. It's all like you're saying. But I go to look at the guides and the camp counselors and stuff like that. Not one native person. So
yeah,
and like to hear, I see that I saw that on your story that you got named as a camp count and that's so amazing. Is there anyone else that you're trying to get in and be like, yo, come do this with me? And
yeah,
because my cousin used to go to that camp as a kid.
that's so amazing. Oh my
Yeah.
God, so cool. Yeah, so basically what the process was is I helped also like get the camp a grant for $300,000 through the California Natural Resources Agency. That's meant to help retain or I guess increase youth access to the redwoods and also Native American education. The grant is through, I forgot what proposition. I'm blanking on it now, but it's it's basically a grant tied to the marijuana tax. And so this money from the California legal marijuana tax is supposed to go back and support and uplift communities impacted by the war on drugs. So this is like our populations and who we serve at the camp. All these kids are like club members and inner city kids, low socioeconomic status, like folks that we can really try and help. And my job as the Native American Initiative Coordinator this past summer has also been to try and retain more Native campers, because in the past that's something that we were failing to do. Like you were saying, no Native counselors, on our watch. That we've had some in the past few years, but the retention of the staff hasn't been like the best. And also that of the Native campers, because the only ones that I can think of, at least when I was a kid growing up, were my brother and I just growing up in the camp. So it's been a very rare experience to undergo and to see how the camp is changing, and also just seeing where I can like fit in now, because it's still a place that I love and adore so much. I've spent every summer there basically for the past decade. I started going in 2010. I started going to the Boys and Girls Club when I was 6, so that was in 2008. So I've been with the organization really for a long time, also have these ties. In terms of bringing on people, I've been really fortunate to work with Buffy Schmidt, who is the vice chairwoman of Sherwood Valley Pomo. It's been really amazing. We've been able to work with her. I wrote a land acknowledgement jointly with her for the camp, because I knew that like something that I don't want it to just be, my voice, because if I really wanted to, I could write the land acknowledgement, but we need that, that voice of the people in whose land which we occupy, in order for their voices to really be heard and for others to really hear their voices. So working with her has been really lovely, and her just also coming up to the camp and doing demonstrations. I've spent a lot of time talking with her about the history of the area, different native plants that are medicinal that we have on our property. And we're hoping to create more partnerships where Sherwood Valley can come up and gather acorns during harvest time, and different times of the year. I wasn't able to go, but I know that we invited them up at the Pomo Weaver Society. We definitely had them come up to camp and try and gather some sedge, though I don't know how much they were able to get, but we did invite them up. And also another like big shout out to Lois Fluke, who's also from Sherwood Valley. She's a nutritionist. So she is lovely and has come up from the past 2 summers with Buffy, and has brought like so many amazing like native foods, like acorns for us to grind, some manzanita sugar, like different ferns and things. And just, it's been really great to like get other people who would normally not interact with these, with native people and just native foodways and ways of being, because also a lot of our staff come from overseas. We have a program called Camp America, in which staff come over from countries all over the world, so they might have never interacted with the native person in their life, and I've heard a lot of just people thanking me and wanting to like learn more about the history of what the camp was before it was actually there. So yeah.
And I think that's cool to, because like a lot of people do the land acknowledgement, right? But then don't do the part where they're allowing people to come in and gather. So I think that's like, for you to be able to do that is like so cool. Like, cause think about that opportunity that, because like you said, those native people might have never been able to interact with the people in that camp, but also they may never have gotten the opportunity to go and gather acorns in these places.
Absolutely.
So you giving these people the opportunity to be there and like, oh, like I've never gathered here or anything like that, and then like to continue that is amazing.
It's really like, it's one of the best things we can do in order to like reassure these partnerships and relationships with people that we always should have had those relationships with in the first place. I'm still really trying to like get down to the real history of the camp. It's hard because it's tied so much with the railroad, because the land we purchased was from the Union Lumber Company, or excuse me, we leased it in 1931. And since then, the camp, that was leased from the Union Lumber Company. We purchased it actually 10 years later. But really, prior to that history, there's not a ton of information on Northern Pomo people, on Sherwood Valley, Coyote Valley people that might have been living in this area that we now call Camp Mendocino, that I can really refer to. So it's been a lot of digging, especially like for my thesis. And I know I want a lot of it to come from interviewing folks on history that they may know about the area, especially history about the railroad and why exactly maybe the camp was placed near the railroad, is really what I'm thinking. Um, and yeah, a lot of it I want to be like from elders and from, oral narration as well.
Yeah, because I remember a while back you reaching out looking for information about that. Um,
Yes. So
yeah.
I've been working on it now for almost over a year, because I started the job initially back last December. And so since then, I've been, as the Native American initiative for the camp, I've been writing the land acknowledgement. I'm just trying to create a history curriculum for the camp, placing the land acknowledgements up all around the camp, explaining to the youth what they are. Our campus still has like places of growth. Currently at the camp, we still, one of the groups of youth are still to this day housed in teepees, of which I'm still trying to get taken down because obviously teepees do not belong in the forest and they're not the original structure even um, of this land that is California. So really trying to plan out with my supervisors on what we could do to change these structures and how I can educate folks on, how misappropriative they are in reality, especially, with youth staying in them. Youth, every time, like, they have this idea that, like, oh, they're so cool, they're so majestic, but they're not understanding the historical significance behind them, and that they are still, teepees being used to this day by real, native peoples, plains peoples. And I don't think it's something to take lightly and use for like a structure. It's also just a memory of our history, the camp history and the culture that we're already trying to move away from.
Yeah, because I mean, I think it was redwood like bark. They used redwood bark
Yeah.
as like, but it was. I think it might have. I don't know how the structure was built though. Actually, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of the research that I did, it was like a redwood bark house in which, Pomo people lived, especially by the coast. Buffy was telling me is that, Pomo people lived on the land that was now Kaminasina since time immemorial and would travel back and forth from the coast to the forests, to gather like medicine, seaweed, abalone, different shellfish. There was a lot of, interchanging of place and, just migration that happened naturally. So yeah, the least thing we can do is to invite, our local Pomo folks up. What I'm really trying to like push for is, them be able to come up more often, and also have more Native staff as well at the camp. Because being the only Native staff I have been for at least the last 2 years, except for this year when my brother and I both worked, has been very draining, and it's a very draining position to be in and to have, this responsibility to educate others and sometimes having them not understand or say something that maybe they shouldn't say or maybe they didn't think before they spoke. Everybody just comes with different levels of knowledge, especially when it comes to Native history, because was the goal, of the United States government, is for us, to be
Yeah.
exterminated and forgotten about. Yeah.
And do you see yourself going into this line of work for your life?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think being an educator is something that I'm super passionate about. I'm really thinking hard about like curriculum reform and the way in which we teach about Native history to youth, especially because that's when they're the most vulnerable and when they're going to have these images in their mind and these histories in their mind for the rest of their lives. And I think I've been working with youth I started when I was a teenager, also through the camp, just working as a teen staff during the summer. Eventually, when I got older, I got hired to work at one of the clubhouses, which I did for about over a year. And then I started working at the camp last year, because I was supposed to start in 2020, but COVID happened, so the camp didn't open. And then 2021, I was still working at the club, but working with youth and also tying in, those elements of Native education has always been something that has been important to me, that I've tried to like educate youth on. Because they ask me, like, you go to school, I tell them, I elaborate what Native Studies is. A lot of the youth that I worked at back in the clubhouse were indigenous, but to like Central America, which, San Francisco has a huge population of just Latinx diaspora of, Guatemalans and Hondurans and indigenous folks from all of those countries. And so, talking with them as well, our histories are different, but similar in many ways. And I think just growing up also in San Francisco, where it's supposed to be like progressive, even the history we're being taught is also a false one in the textbooks. I still remember making my mission, San Francisco Diocese mission diorama project. And even then, not fully realizing or understanding what these structures were and how they were used, to torture and basically eradicate Native peoples. So yeah, definitely passionate about educating.
Yeah. I lived in Santa Cruz for 10 years, and like you're talking about like the missions, like nobody even really knows about like the Amamutsin. I found out that Awaswas is like a kind of just a separate tribe, I think.
Mm.
So like I feel like no one knows that these I'm still learning about it, so I'd probably just butcher whatever I just learned the other day right now. But I'm just learning new things about these people that I lived in their territory for 10 years, and I had no really clue about. So, and that's another thing I was gonna say too. I think that would be amazing too. Like you're saying, like creating curriculum, if you like create a curriculum for like camps, because like you said, like camps all over America have this like native like theme to them, but
Yeah,
don't actually like have any like ties to it.
exactly. There's no ties to it, or they're not doing any work to progress and make it better. Like, I would say, like, our camp is one of definitely the more progressive ones. I remember one of my supervisors had gone to American Camp Association ACA conference, and I think there was a workshop that they went to on land acknowledgements, and out of all of the camp representatives in the room, they were the only ones in which their camp had a land acknowledgement, and that was ours. So again, it's definitely the baby steps and just a bunch of things that we want to better about the camp. Because it's working. The things that I've been helping to implement in the camp are working. I was able to this summer through the grant, through the funding that I got through my grant. I was able to order a lot of stuff for making baskets. I made a lot of baskets with the kids, and they absolutely loved it. They were really getting into it. And I was also able to create basically this wall, in which I called it like the indigenous learning wall. So, which Buffy also helped me with this too, because a lot of the plants and animals that are on the wall are in Northern Pomo language. So it's not only a wall with about the history of what this camp was before the camp was here, Pomo, ancestral Pomo homelands, but also for the kids to be able to learn, birds of the Mendocino forest, of the land in which, they are staying on for however long they're going to be here this summer. And so something educational and interactive, to really get them thinking about native plants and animals, that have always been here and have always been, important. Also my job has also been like collaborating with the other specialists in the camp that run programming and seeing how I can bring my knowledge to their programming. So actually, my partner who ran the media, who's running photography, we were able to do like a scavenger hunt for native plants. So the youth would go around with their cameras and look for native plants, like looking for mugwort, looking for white man's foot, looking for self-heal, looking for different things in the forest that they can take pictures of. I'm trying to think of what else I was collaborating with, but I think that might be the main ones. I also, environmental ed was a big one, which I worked hand in hand with as one of my really close friends. We did a nature hike. We did lots of hikes. Water hikes were a popular one, which I would come on and talk about like native plants and how they're used. Come look at this bay laurel that you can use for medicine and tea that's always been used. So yeah, really just bringing my knowledge and really kind of just trying to spread it wherever I can go. Because also one of the main questions I get asked about being a native studies major is, what are you going to do with your degree? I feel like there's a really big stigma around us not having stable like occupation after graduation. I'm really trying to like break that stigma. Me being in this position that I have for the camp, this position wasn't made just for anyone. It was made, for me as an educator and with my specialty in NAS and in the history. So definitely hoping to not only be employed, but to be working in education as well.
And I think like like what you were saying about bringing it like this education of indigenous knowledge in actual indigenous knowledge into these camps, and I think people like you and people like Buffy and like all that, and you bringing them in, I think it's amazing because that'll just continue people to be like, oh, let's maybe like give people ideas, like maybe another camp will see it and be like, oh, maybe we want to do that too, or something like, I don't know, just it just continues the fire in people and wanting them to continue that,
Yes.
So I think that's really, really cool that, and it's just even cooler that obviously you're an indigenous person just bringing that stuff in, and it's like, it's just fucking, I'm just so happy to see that. Like, you know what I mean? It's like the coolest thing.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, just like trying to educate folks however possible, and especially wanting to spread that knowledge onto other camps is ultimately my goal. I think, our camp can really try and be a model for other summer camps that aren't, as progressing as quickly, because honestly, it's not like a quick action. This like culture change from shifting from calling the groups tribes to now we say villages, and the villages are named after animals of the redwood forest. So we got the frogs for the little boys, the otters for the little girls, like trying to make it really cute. And also, big thing, a part of our camp culture is cheers. So making those cheers also work with the names of the villages in which campers are at, because, before that we're saying villages, they were saying the names of tribes, which actually, Poma was one used for the oldest girls. And I'm part Apache, and that was one used for the oldest boys. So caused a lot of confliction for me as a youth. So I'm hoping that with writing my thesis, that this can be avoided in the future by other camps, and hopefully I can help, spread this knowledge to other camps, because it's only going to help like give Native people a voice as well.
Cool, and I think it's gonna happen. I think you're gonna make it happen. And I definitely like frog and otter as better names for
Yeah.
sure. Um, and we're gonna wrap back around to school. And you said you're at your fourth year, correct?
Yeah.
And how has that experience been? Because you said you grew up in San Francisco, and that's a short trip to Berkeley. How has that experience been? Did you move to Berkeley, or are you still staying in San Francisco?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I currently live in Berkeley, but I didn't live in Berkeley until last fall. So basically, I started school during the pandemic. That was my first year of college. So all my classes were online. So I thought, there's no point in me like spending money on the dorms. I'm just gonna live at home. Was working at the same time. Got my little Safeway side hustle, cashier going, and so I didn't move because I was saving up money to move. It was just too expensive for me at the time, especially with COVID. A lot of stuff happening in my family life personally. But I moved to Berkeley last year, and it definitely like changed my experience, especially being like a Native person in the university, and just this really racist and horrible history that not only Berkeley has, but just kind of the whole University of California system as a whole. But I started really getting involved in the Native community really in my freshman year. The Native American Student Development Office at Berkeley was the first like organization to like reach out to me, like comment congratulations on my post that I like got into Berkeley. They were immediately supportive and kind. Even during the pandemic, we had like Zoom calls, had a mentor, grad student for checking on me like biweekly. They sent me like a bunch of swag, like native NASD swag for Berkeley. And it wasn't until my second year that I started actually coming to campus for class that I really started to utilize the Native Community Center. And that was actually the first year that we had a center on campus. It had just opened up. And prior to that, the Native and Indigenous community at Berkeley had never had a space of their own. They had a tiny cubicle office that we still have. And so I really took advantage of the space coming into school only 2 days a week because I was still working and living in the city, which became a lot. That commuter lifestyle is very just like taxing. Even with it being, you know, so close to SF, it still gets to be a lot, especially working on top of being a full-time student. So I also started getting involved in my second semester, my sophomore year, with INC, with the Indigenous and Native Coalition. That's how I started hearing about them, because I would come to campus on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and their general body meetings, which we still have biweekly. They were just on the same night that I decided like had class, so I would just stay on campus all day, go to the INC meetings, which we usually have like some sort of fun activity, basically like just being together as a community. Like we would have beading sessions, we had like a paint and sip on the Memorial Glade, lots of just fun activities, and where I got to like meet other folks, other Native folks. And that's not really experience that I was getting during COVID and on Zoom. I didn't really know that many community members. It was really hard for me to like open up and get into the community initially, just because like I also didn't live in Berkeley. So like having to commute kind of creates this barrier from participating in a lot of stuff, in which if you were to live in Berkeley or like near campus or in off-campus housing, it makes it like a lot more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I learned about INC. And now I've been with INC. This is my second year. I'm now the executive director. Last year I was the K through 12 director, recruitment director. So basically what INC, I guess I can explain also what INC is. So we're the Indigenous and Native Coalition Recruitment and Retention Center at Berkeley. So we are one of seven recruitment and retention centers on campus. We're part of the larger Bridges Multicultural Resource Center. And so we were actually all like basically birthed out of this proposition called 09 that bans affirmative action in California. And so basically when admitting students, University of California cannot consider race, ethnicity, gender, nationality, or any of that sort when admitting students. And so us as students, we then become the recruiters and the retainers of these marginalized student populations. It kind of goes back to that really racist history just of the university, that, you know, these institutions initially were never made for people that look like us and that are, you know, us, you know, Berkeley specifically, and a lot of other institutions in the United States are, you know, founded out of the Morrill Act, which was enabled by President Abraham Lincoln, which basically set up a bunch of land grants all over the United States to build these institutions for higher education. But obviously these were white, male-dominated spaces, in which also Indigenous land, you know, was stolen and thefted at the same time. And so Inc. specifically, we, work to retain Native American and indigenous students. We have a lot of programming that goes on throughout the year. So as the K through 12 director last year, I worked to get more Native students on campus, prospective students, did a lot of outreach, worked directly with the Indian Education Program in San Francisco, tabled at their events. We were able to actually invite, with our funds through Inc., we get a lot of funding from the Associated Students of UC. University of California. And so we were able to bring Matu Wayuhis, who does soundtrack for Res Dogs. We were able to bring him to one of the events for the Indian Eds. It was their first Native Heritage celebration ever.
Wow.
So we were able to bring him, and it was really dope, like in person, and just see like how big he's gotten, and also just be able to like share him with the community too, of just folks in SF. A lot of people came out too for the event, so it was really worth it.
That's amazing. And when is the powwow that you guys are having? Let's plug that.
Yeah, so the powwow, thank you for mentioning that. We have our couple of powwow coordinators that have been working extremely hard on it since this summer. And we were originally hoping it to be in October, but we just couldn't get dates and places and things secured in time. So the powwow will be January 24th, 2024. Or excuse me, the 21st or the 24th. It's on the flyer. Sorry, I'm blanking, but it's on a Sunday. It'll be 11 to 5, and it'll be at the UC Berkeley campus in Poly Ballroom, which is in the MLK Student Union. One of the bigger buildings. It's a bigger ball, so it'll be inside.
I get dates. I get dates wrong all the time. I had to switch. I got the date that on our flyer that I made was wrong, so I completely get it. But yeah, Berkeley, I feel like these institutes have like a long hit, especially Berkeley, because Berkeley has a lot of native, like Pomo basket or just
Yeah.
California baskets.
Yeah.
So like, how do you feel about that? Going to a school that does kind of have all of this stuff.
Yeah, that's a really great question, and that's something Inc. as an organization has actually directly asked the Chancellor Carol Chris, who this is her last year coming up. But last year, really every year, Bridges and the whole coalition, all of the RRCs are able to have a one-on-one like meeting with Carol and all of her like constituents of folks that like are under her. We're one of the more like privileged organizations on campus, student orgs on campus that's able to like even talk with her at all. And so Inc. specifically last year brought up the slow process that it has been of, returning the ancestral remains that are in the Phoebe Hearst Museum of Anthropology. We have some of the highest counts of, ancestors and baskets, and just really just sacred religious and cultural items that should not be in our institution. And that, every day, us as Native students on the campus we're reminded of the institution's, original colonial intentions. I don't know if you're familiar with the story of Ishi, but Ishi was a man, a Yahi man, and he was deemed, quote, the last wild Indian in the United States. He was actually taken by a UC Berkeley anthropologist who's pretty well known. His name's Alfred Kroeber. And he was basically, taken. All of his family had been massacred in one of these mass massacres in what's near now Oroville. And he was basically like taken captive, and this was probably in the early 1900s, in which like natives in captivity became something that was like really prized by white people, and then putting like native people in zoos because they were seen as less than human, or like a race of people that are about to go extinct. And so Ishi was that for Berkeley. He stayed in San Francisco. He stayed at UCSF as well. And Kroeber would make arrows. People would come in and see him, basically like a museum exhibit. And now at Berkeley, we have a courtyard that's named after Ishi, but there's absolutely no information on who Ishi was, the significance of the courtyard being named after him, and also something that's been also very common at Berkeley and in the UC system, and I think in a lot of just more higher education institutions in the US is just renaming these buildings. So there was a building named after Kroeber that's no longer named Kroeber Hall. It's named something different. But yeah, these institutions, you know, how they were not made for Native people is it really shows. And it's also a history that, you know, deters our communities and our people from wanting to pursue higher education, because already off the rip, like, these places are not safe for us. So really, Native Community Center as well has been a really safe place for me as a Native student on campus. I've been an intern. This is my second year as an intern at the Native Community Center. So I help to run like programming for Native just community members, students, working at the front desk, just greeting folks, explaining what the space is, you know, why it's significant for our community. Because a lot of folks like to come in and think that they don't know what the space is. Even though we have signage, we like to come in and just kind of ask if it is a study space, like, can I study here? And we have to explain, well, this is not exactly open. It's for a specific population that has historically been marginalized. So, yeah.
That's amazing. And you kind of touched on this earlier, but I just want to go a little bit more in depth on it. I like to ask this question to everybody because everybody's quite like answer is different. What does decolonize mean to you?
Yeah, this is something that I've been thinking about for the past week. And I really think that to decolonize is to really know one's history, and especially when it comes to like one's, you know, what'll it come from your native identity and having, you know, the access to be able to, like you were saying earlier, big proponent of like reconnection. Think that there should really be, you know, ways in which people are able to like reconnect correctly, if that makes sense. I wouldn't say correctly, just in a proper way, because sometimes there are folks who go about that in a way that isn't the most productive or helpful to the communities in which you're trying to like not even claim, just, you know, reconnect to.
Yeah.
And so I think decolonize, you know, knowing one's history, especially knowing, you know, the Native history that has been consistently time and time again erased, not prioritized, and also to feel liberated as Native people. I think now more than ever, I'm seeing, you know, some of strength coming from youth, specifically Native youth. I'm really grateful to go to school with so many amazing community members from all different types of tribes, from all across the United States and also just south of the border as well. I'm very privileged to like know all of the people and just have been taught what I've known. So that spread of knowledge is something that I think decolonizing is, you know, a part of as well, like just overall knowledge in Native history and knowing oneself.
And I think you're a perfect example of because you like you said in the beginning, you're reconnecting, right? And what people like to do is a lot is they'll put Apache or whatever tribe they're saying they're from, or like a lot of people like to say Cherokee, but won't do anything for those communities.
Exactly.
And you're a perfect example of like you're reconnecting and you're helping communities reconnect with the lands that they've been pushed out of. So I think what you're doing is a perfect example of decolonizing. And also for me, I've been kind of moving towards like decolonize my mindset because I'm already at a point in my life. I'm colonized. I'm not gonna stop using lights. I'm not gonna stop using my phone. You know, I love all these things. I love a hot shower. You know, I'm not gonna go back and hunt my own food. I mean, I will, but it is like I'm not gonna do it every single day. You know, so I think like for us to decolonize our mindsets is the beginning, and then hopefully one day we'll be able to get back to that. But I doubt it. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really true. And to say like decolonizing one's mindset, I think, especially growing up an urban native. I still, I don't think it was until I got to Berkeley in which I like started hanging out with other folks that are like enrolled members of their tribes, and kind of feeling that disconnect for me since I'm not enrolled and I'm not eligible to be enrolled also since I'm, you know, mixed race. It's been something that I've definitely like reflected on, and I think sometimes I've definitely beat myself up over, you know, not feeling native enough because I don't have a card or something that proves that like I am who I really am. I am who I say I am, because in reality, like in the United States, Native people are the only, you know, like ethnic group, and also we count as a political category that has to like prove like who we are, like a piece of paper and a document saying you are who you say you are. So I think part of me and being in my journey has been trying to let that go and more focusing on the history that's been lost within my own family, and in what you're saying, absolutely lifting up the communities and voices in which, you know, I've been occupying their land, going to this camp for 10 plus years. Something I really keep in mind, you know, as an urban native person is, you know, I'm not on my ancestral homelands. They would be in, you know, New Mexico, Colorado, like border. Um, and so I try to always pay homage to the first people in which I occupy, you know, the land, especially, you know, the Ohlone, Moakma currently, and, you know, the Ramaytush Ohlone in SF, because it's my upbringing, it's my home, but it wouldn't be my home, you know, if it weren't for the people that have, you know, fought and died to keep these lands sacred, and especially also in, you know, Northern Pueblo territory at the camp as well.
Yeah, I don't think you should beat yourself up about not being enrolled, because I will never also never be able to be an enrolled person because I was adopted the first day I was born. So I don't have that like my mom, and she's a Pomo woman, but I technically don't have Pomo blood inside me. But I was that since the day I was born. So like there's nothing I can do about that. There's nothing I can do about that upbringing, but it still gets to like same with me. Like it still gets to me that like, you know, I'm not like technically, you know what I mean? In like, but like I do all the ceremonial dances. I do like, you know, I'm trying to learn the language.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard, but I'm trying. But yeah, I don't think like don't get yourself down because the work that you're doing is proving that who you are and who you want to be connected to and who you're going to be connected to. So don't let a piece of paper or a number ever like stop you from what you're doing.
Thank
Um,
Appreciate that. It's really true. It really resonates with me.
Yeah, and I appreciate you coming on because we only have an hour and there's only a couple more minutes left. But is there anything real quick before you get out of here that you want to just let people know about? Anything that Ink is doing that's coming up that you really want people to follow, and then also like I'll try to tag their Instagram in the comment or the caption too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Inc. is currently working on our powwow. Yeah, I believe January 21st, 2024 is the date. It's a Sunday. And what else are we working on? We're currently working on our Native Jumpstart, Native Transcending program, which is a program for prospective Native students. So it's for high school juniors, seniors, and also for community college transfers that are looking to transfer to Berkeley. We have a program that brings them to Berkeley overnight, lets them stay in the dorms on the Native American theme floor, which is in one of our dorms. It's a majority Native and indigenous student dorm. So it's a really cool experience to like live with other Native folks. So they'll get a taste of that and just kind of what it's like to like be Native and an academic at Berkeley. Also, they get help with writing their personal insight questions for the application. So they get paired with a grad student mentor who's also Native to work with them one-on-one with that before the program. And then kind of just anything they have leading up to applying. So we have those two programs, and another program we'll have during the spring, which will be for admitted Native students who have been admitted to UC Berkeley, is senior weekend. So that's program that we do with all of the recruitment and retention centers across bridges, in which it also it's another overnight program, but also on a bigger scale of like, it's through our multicultural resource center. So they get different resources. They get to also experience campus, mock lectures, and stuff like that. So really just trying to like gauge opportunities and invite folks to campus, because it is possible to get here as Native students. So yeah, that's what we're working on. We're also going to be having another meeting with the chancellor very soon, also in November. That's going to be another coalition-wide thing. And Inc. is thinking hard about talking about just the representation of Native staff at the university. You know, we have very low numbers of Native staff, Native faculty. We want to see those numbers increase. Also like to mention, I'm going to be talking with my boss later this week about what to finalize our topic as, but also just thinking broader of Native American Opportunity Plan for all, because in the UC system, again, going back to not being able to be enrolled, you know, UC Opportunity Plan provides free all paid tuition for students that are California residents and members of a federally recognized tribe. So obviously that doesn't include a lot of California Native tribes that are still not federally recognized. And also, again, just other folks that are not enrolled in their community.
Awesome. I thank you so much for coming on and speaking your truth and telling your story. And I really appreciate this one. You let out a lot. I really appreciate the work that you're doing and what you're, like I said, what you're bringing to camps like Camp Mendocino in not only a land acknowledgement, but you're actually giving people an opportunity to come there, because that's the biggest thing with land acknowledgements people do is they do the land acknowledgement and that's it. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing, and I definitely want to get some earrings from you. If you're still making earrings, I definitely want to cop some.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really thank you for coming on. A lot of people were jumping in on the comments and just like giving you praise and giving you love. So I appreciate you for sure.
Yes. Thank you so much, Juan, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I hope you have a good rest of your
Yes.
day.
You too. Have a wonderful night.
Right on. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Poppy for coming on and showing love and telling everybody what they're doing out at Berkeley. At the end of this month, October 27th, I'm going to be doing interviews at the Art Expo at Eric Wilder's Native Art Expo in Mendocino, California. So check us out there. And then next month, we're going to be doing the Finest Feathers fashion show, where it's the Battle of the Beads, all that type of stuff. So tune in with that. I also do have some merch left, and I am planning a live event in Santa Cruz, California too. So keep your eyes peeled for all that stuff. Peace and love, guys. Deuces.